Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast, coming to you live on a Tuesday evening. My name is Steven, and I am the host. Feels like it's been a minute since we've been on the podcast. We've gotten 3 different videos from the Alexes. Obviously, Alex Katzen did a combine preview. Alex Insdorf talked about the Elijah Molden extension, and then had a great interview yesterday with the one and only Theo Ash. So we've had videos on the channel, but the two of us have not been here on the channel since Thursday. So every time we have some other videos in between, it always feels like a longer time than it actually is. But excited to be here with my guy. Excuse me.
Getting choked up, man.
Getting choked up. I just get so emotional about working with one of my best friends on talking about the Chargers. So,
Sure.
Tyler, what's up, man? How you doing tonight?
Yeah, distance does make the heart grow fonder. I'm doing very well. Not as emotional as you, but I am excited to talk about these free agents.
I just we had some spicy Asian food for dinner tonight. So,
right on.
Getting a little bit of an after kick, I guess.
I get you, man. Spicy Asian food, that'll do it to you.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. Okay, so today we are going to review some of the things that Joe Hortiz spoke about today. He did all the interviews. I think I saw at least 5 different interviews of his that he did. He also had his press conference, his annual combine press conference. So there were definitely some things that we want to dive into. Again, there's going to be a lot of GM talk, if you will, that comes out of these interviews. So not a ton of concrete things, but there's definitely one big thing that came out, which is in the caption here, which is Zion Johnson's future. And then we're going to rank our top 10 Chargers specific free agents. We've talked a lot about sorting particular targets at specific positions. And so today we're going to rank all the players that we have talked about and hopefully have a good discussion about where this class sorts out. Again, lots of stuff coming out about the combine. Some of these players potentially already in talks with their current team. So Chargers as well, kind of doing the same thing, but we'll hit on some of those here in a minute. Okay, first and foremost with Joe Hortiz, again, the big ticket item that he discussed was the possibility that former guilty as charged favorite Zion Johnson could be an option for them at center. He did not play center at Boston College. He did get evaluated as a potential center option coming out of the draft. He did center work at the Senior Bowl. He did center work at the Combine, all of that stuff. Obviously, the Chargers took him, and when they took him, they had Corey Linsley, so they did not need a center. He has not played center in the NFL. But according to Joe Hortiz, he has been working this offseason so far and has been taking reps at center. And Joe Hortiz mentioned him today that he is a potential option for them to start at center in 2025. So that's kind of a summary, if you will, of what Joe Hortiz has said today. Your thoughts, Tyler, as we kind of make this unfortunate pivot for Zion Johnson taking snaps at center.
It would be interesting if Zion's protection call issues would just be him calling out protection calls. I mean, just not that he's a very smart individual. That was evident from early interviews and, of course, when the Chargers selected him and his majors and whatnot. So never for lack of intelligence. It's just for whatever reason he's just not put it together.
Yeah,
obviously not for lack of talent. I'll be the guy who says, I think this is just whatever. This whole thing about, we're going to try Zion at center and give her, we're going to put a competition and do the best and this and that and whatever. I'll believe it when I see it. And maybe I'm a jaded former, Telesconian season ticket holder. And therefore I believe things are going to be terrible and awful. And that's just the way it's going to be for years for me.
Yeah.
But I just don't think this is really an actual thing. People can run with it if they want to, but I'll believe it when I see it. I don't know that this is even the best option. And now there's not exactly better center options. I guess if they think Zion Johnson can work at center, that might be better than Ryan Kelly and praying that he plays for 17, 18, 19, 20 games in 2025. That's probably better than going after a round 1 center, round 2 center. I really don't buy it. And that's maybe very cynical of me.
Sure.
But I just think it's a bunch of coach speak. Like, we think Bradley Bozeman's coming back. We're pretty sure Bradley Bozeman's coming back. Now, potentially could be a guard. So that is technically an option for them. But I think it's a cute thing to say to the media. I'll believe when I see it. And if I'm wrong, great. But I don't really believe this is actually going to be significant.
I think it's partially significant. I think there were people who kind of took it and ran with it, like you mentioned. To me, the thing that this says is that Zion is going to have to prove that he can start for this team. He is going to have to go through a roster competition to earn a starting spot. And whether that's at center or left guard or right guard, I think is kind of up in the air. But I think this is the Chargers coming out and saying that he has not proven enough to be a no-brainer starter. And I do think this also kind of eliminates not there them picking up his fifth year option will be shocking at this point. But this to me was like, this is like no more fifth year option. Like we're not talking about it. So it to me, it's unfortunate because, we were hoping, I guess that this current regime would come in and they're saying all the right things this past offseason. And you have Nick Hardwick in the building and you have, Greg Roman, who was a former offensive lineman. Like we were all hoping, at least those of us that had any, positivity around Zion, that he could figure it out in this specific regime. And that has not come to fruition. So to me, kind of like the last stage of former first round offensive lineman hasn't really figured it out is like, well, let's see if he can play another position. And it's an unfortunate thing that we have reached that point for him. But I do think the legitimacy of this statement from Joe Hortiz is that Zion's job is not going to be handed to him. He is going to have to earn a starting spot. Can he do that? Remains to be seen. Is that a center? I kind of doubt it. Like cool, he was taking snaps. Like Jordan McFadden also took some snaps at center last offseason, and that didn't become anything. Like there's a very real difference between like, oh, hey, in the offseason, like go snap the football versus like call protections in an NFL game. So I agree with you that I don't really buy that he will actually play center. But to me, this does show that the Chargers are understanding that his spot needs to be up for grabs.
It also does, to the, I guess, more positive side to this, if this works out, it makes sense given the free agent and draft class ahead of them, where center is not the strength, but there are guard options even beyond your Trey Smith or somebody in round one. There are guys you can take, tackle to guard converts in the draft, happens all the time, or just guards in the draft or guards in free agency. So you can find more upgrades at two spots on your line by getting guards. And if that's the way they want to invest and make center work with Zion and see how that goes, great. So that is, from that perspective, it is smart. I understand why they would do that. And Joe Hortiz, Jim Harbaugh, these guys are very smart. So I would understand from that perspective why they would. I just am a non-believer that they're actually going to do it.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. My general strategy, if I were running the team, and again, I'm not, and I'm here podcasting for a reason, and Joe Hortiz is in Indianapolis doing all this media tour for a reason. My opinion is that it would be a smarter allocation of resources to go sign two veteran, reliable guards, and then you can figure center out later. Like, of course, I would have loved to have a draft pick from last year just be kind of handed the reins this year. It'd be great to have that guy. But with this specific free agency class, we'll get to Ryan Kelly in a minute here. But for the Chargers, I do think that there are better guard options than there are investing in a center. So for me, like the question is, would I rather have Zion, Ryan Kelly, and a right guard? Or would I rather have two new guards and Bradley Bozeman and maybe a center, or Zion can push him out of that spot? I can understand why the Chargers would be interested in that kind of avenue. I think to me, it makes more sense, at least right now.
The other thing is, though, like of the three interior guys they should upgrade or move on or whatever from, Zion's last place, I think, in that needs to upgrade from these guys' department. Like right guard is obvious, and then center definitely. And I think Zion, for better or worse, whatever you think of his play, maybe we're more positive, others are more negative, he was the best of the three, at least down the stretch. I think in the second half, last third, whatever you want to call it, of the season, he was better. So again, like leave him there and address the other two positions. But I don't know. We'll see what they do. They took a left tackle. They moved into right tackle. It was one of the greatest seasons of offensive line play for a rookie we've ever seen.
Yeah.
Granted, not everybody's Joe Alt. So I have some faith in some things that they do. On the other hand, I watched that interior. I saw the decisions they made at the interior, the lack of actual competition in camp. And maybe they've, learned something here. Maybe they're going to change moving forward because that didn't work out for them where they're having a week 17, 16, 17, 18 competition. And then, oops, it didn't work in the playoffs. I can't imagine why. So maybe they are learning from their mistakes, and that would be really good. But this is a wait and see for me.
Yeah, it's a wait and see. Extremely important offseason along the interior for them to get right. So, it on the field, if this were a few years ago, I would be maybe a little bit more optimistic about Zion's chances of making the switch. But he's now played 3 NFL seasons. Like, there's a lot of habits and there's a lot of specific attributes that he has developed. And I don't know, man. Like, making the transition to center in the middle of your career is just not. It's not something that happens really often. There are parts that I would be pretty excited about, like having Zion, the athlete, at center, and getting him to be able to do some of the pulling and second level stuff at center. I think would make a lot of sense for him. That part would be an upgrade over what you got from Bradley Bozeman, who just couldn't make those reach blocks. He couldn't get to that second level, whereas Zion could go hit that level. That part would be great. I think individually, pass protection at center is obviously much weaker, or much not as difficult, I guess is what I'm trying to say, because you're not getting as many true one-on-one opportunities. But there's such a high level of difficulty of the mental aspect of things, where you go from playing 3 years in a row at guard, and now you're calling all the protections, and now you're handling all the communication. Now Justin Herbert and you are just the communication between quarterback and center is so much greater than quarterback and guard. Like, can Zion handle that? Is he smart enough to handle that? Yes, but he's never done it before. He has never played center before. And so I would be skeptical of that aspect of things individually. Like, could Zion play better at center? Probably. But to me, it's just, I would just question the legitimacy of him handling the mental workload of making that transition. Again, he is extremely smart. He can build a computer out of nothing. But it's just different going from basically you get the play call and you do it versus you get the play call, you have everything, the cadence working that you and your quarterback are doing. You're calling protections, you're communicating to everybody else the protection. It's a lot more difficult. So it's just he's never had to do it before. Could he do it in a pinch? Probably, but as a long-term starter, I would have my questions.
Would they then consider putting more of that on Justin Herbert's plate then? And did they, with Shane Day in year 2, start to say they were going to do that back in the Lombardi?
Justin has taken a larger workload of the protection calls every single season. And I feel like last year he killed and audibled more than we have seen him in the past. But having him do all of the protections, I think is just not. I think there needs to be a very clear dividing line between quarterback responsibility and center responsibility. And obviously we saw Phillip Rivers make all the protection calls for years, but that was well late into his career. And so I would be a little hesitant to have Justin do all of that. But if Zion individually is their best option and you want to make it less taxing for him, sure, I guess that could work. But I believe that a center should be able to and should have the responsibility to handle the protection calls. I just think it's part of the job description for me. And if you can't do that, I would just rather go find somebody else who can do that. It's just part of the job description for me.
Yeah, no, I agree there, but I'm curious, given this is potentially an option.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like you mentioned, Jim Harbaugh said at the owner meetings last year, we have Jordan McFadden and we have these other guys, and then they did nothing. And Sam Mustipher ended the season as their backup center. So
yeah,
a little skeptical there for sure.
Yeah, was it last year where they said we have a couple guys we feel comfortable snapping the football?
Yep.
And then they just were replaced by Sam Mustipher by week 7 or whatever.
Yep, that is accurate.
Yeah. So we feel comfortable having Zion practice at center, and then very different though. It's very different because this would be a switch. So it's means a little more.
Yeah. If they're actually going to do this, like if Zion is actually an option at center, he needs to not just be taking snaps. Like he needs to get actual reps. Like if you're serious about Zion playing center, he needs to play every single snap in the preseason at center. You have to make that work. And so, there's that part of it. Picking up stunts and things like that. I actually think that would be easier for Zion at center. You're not dealing with the kind of games that you are on the outside, because Zion's biggest problem is taking an edge rusher who is looping around on the inside, or somebody who's coming across from the right side and looping all the way around. The issue with Zion is not like defensive tackles switching. Like that's very easy to handle. So there are parts of Zion at center that make a lot of sense. It's just the protection calls it's such a different beast that he's never done in his career. So I did not expect us to talk about Zion playing center for 16 minutes, but here we are.
Yeah, like 14 and a half. So obviously there's free agency before the draft. And Dark Samus, I will give you credit here. If Zion does switch to center, and this is a real thing, where does guard move, or into your offensive line, I guess guard, move in terms of your priorities for round one?
Yeah, I don't think Zion's really affecting this. To me, taking an interior offensive lineman at 22 is more in play if they get Trey Smith, because if they get Trey Smith, they will not have financial resources to go out and get like a legitimate other option on the interior. So if they miss out on Trey Smith, I think they can go out and pay like 2 legitimate upgrades. And then at that point, paying 2 and also drafting one at 22 is a little overkill. You could take Gray Zabel at 22 and he could be your starting center. That could be a thing, but Thomas Booker's not playing center. And like, I respect the bit. There is a 0% chance I am taking Thomas Booker at 22.
Wow, 0%. I'll go more than 0% chance, but I understand the hesitation.
Yeah, to me, he's not a first round guard, and so I don't know. Okay, the other couple of things that I guess we can talk briefly about, at least that Joe Hortiz talked about all across the day. They are very clearly wanting to bring back Khalil Mack. They have had those conversations with Khalil Mack and his camp. The Chargers can have negotiations with any of their internal free agents. So that's the key difference here with how free agency works. They're not really able to negotiate with external free agents like a Trey Smith, but they can and are negotiating contracts with Khalil Mack, with Poona Ford, with Tier Tart, all of that stuff. So they want Khalil back. Joe Hortiz did kind of hint a little bit that there might be a little interest on Khalil Mack's part, that he might want to see what his value is worth. So technically speaking, tampering doesn't start until March, but it's starting this week. So I think we will get an answer on Khalil Mack next week. I think this will get sorted next week, if he is going to come back to the Chargers or if he is going to play elsewhere. I don't think this is actually going to lead into free agency. I think this happens next week before free agency starts. That is my impression of what Joe Hortiz has said, as well as some background digging behind the scenes.
Yeah, I don't buy that he's going to be anywhere else. I don't frankly know why you would. It's not, I can't imagine it's a financial thing unless someone offers him $40 million a year, which is not going to happen. Then I think, where else would you rather be? And as I said, as we talked about, him as our number one free agent that we'd like the Chargers to have return. If you signed up for year one in Harbaugh, you're definitely going to be around for year two, as long as the play is there and the fit's there and like all that's good. It makes sense for both sides. For our simulation for the offseason, it did make things a bit pricier or more difficult on our end, because we brought back somebody who's projected to get $18 million or $20 million, whatever it is now. And that's before the Molden extension, if you will, which was a lot more than I expected. So who knows what's in play for Khalil Mack coming up.
For sure.
But I just think it's an easy move for them. And I think you just kind of swap him out with Bosa and call it a day.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's some reports about, or not, I guess reporting is the wrong word, but there's some outlets that have, like the Packers landing Khalil Mack as like a prediction. Um, to me, Khalil Mack's decision is very simple for him. If you're leaving the Chargers, you better be a legitimate Super Bowl contender. And
Yeah.
so to me, like, if the Eagles lose Josh Sweat in free agency, that makes
Hmm.
a lot of sense to me. You have Vic Fangio in Philadelphia. They are obviously tied well together. They know each other extremely well. And the Eagles are a bona fide Super Bowl contender. They just won the Super Bowl, obviously. That to me is probably the option number one, I would say, for Khalil if he doesn't
Hmm.
come back to the Chargers and if
Yeah.
Josh Sweat goes elsewhere. Going back to Buffalo makes a lot of sense. He went there for college. The Bills potentially could be cutting Von Miller. They needed legit edge rusher, and Khalil, I think that would help them tremendously, and they are a legitimate contender as well. And
Hmm.
then, as Brendan points out, the Lions would be a great fit for him. They love that kind of edge rusher. They need somebody opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. I
Hmm.
question whether or not they would pay that kind of contract to Khalil Mack.
Right.
But if you're Khalil, those are probably the three teams that I would single out as
Yeah.
if you're leaving the Chargers, those are probably where I would start.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree there.
So apologies to the Packers fans who found our channel apparently a couple weeks ago. I don't know how much we want to talk about the Joey Bosa thing. The comments today that Joe Hortiz made and feel like more GM talk than some of the other things. He loves Joey. He thinks he's a great teammate. He loves that he wants to retire a Charger. He wants to make that happen. I buy that. I think that's real. But the man has a $36 million cap hit, which is the highest among any edge rusher in the league. I think it's higher than basically every player in the league outside of like 7 quarterbacks. $36 million cap hit is a lot. So I buy that he wants him back. I still am of the belief that Joey, at minimum, is going to have to take another pay cut. Like they don't necessarily need to free up the cap space. Like they're good with cap space, they're fine. But I cannot justify keeping Joey Bosa on a $36 million cap hit.
No, I mean, you basically couldn't justify anybody on this roster out there Herbert on a $36 million cap hit, let alone someone who hasn't really been out there. And not that you immediately can take 36 million and suddenly you have 36 million to go sign everybody, but
right.
Yeah, no, it's an impossible contract. Even if, you think Joey Bosa will be back on this team, it ain't on that deal. Like whatever that deal ends up being, it is not that deal. I'd be stunned if that's what they ended up doing.
Yeah. So Daniel Popper pointed this out on the Athletic Football Show today. He asked Joey Bosa about like taking a pay cut. And Joey was like, yeah, like I understood that that's where the team was at. I wanted to work with the team. I wanted to come back, but not everybody wants to take a pay cut. Like everybody here in the chat, like if my boss came to me and said, hey, we want you to take a pay cut so we can hire somebody else, I'd be like, hell no, I'm not doing that. I got shit to pay, man. So I understand like you don't want to take a pay cut again, but the options here are really slim to me because they could theoretically lower the cap hit by extending him. But do you really want to see if Joey Bosa can play another full season and then maybe another one after that? That's not a risk I'm willing to take. No. He might not want to take a pay cut. And if he doesn't, he's cut. Like that's the only other option. So your options for the Chargers are, in my opinion, you extend him to lower his cap hit or you cut him. Those are the two options for me.
Yeah, that was kind of the precedent set last year with Keenan Allen, who had by far and away a better final season with the Chargers than Joey Bosa just had. I mean, I was stunned. I'm still kind of stunned that they traded Keenan Allen, but he wasn't willing to take a pay cut, nor should he if he had to. He shouldn't have had to take a pay cut based on the season that he had. They said, okay, we'll move you to the Bears. He went to the Bears, whatever. Joey, man, like that, you cannot do that contract.
Yeah, I agree. Morningstar pointing out, like, there's definitely an emotional side here. Joey is technically the last San Diego Charger, although Denzel Perryman did return last year, which is kind of funny. I think I've shared this before, but I went on an LDS church mission in 2013 to 2015. When I came back, the Chargers were really bad. And there was all of the like moving stuff. Like I was not super into the Chargers in 2015, that first season when I came back. Like Joey played a key role in kind of reinvigorating my fandom, because that rookie season in 2016 was incredible. And I've always had an affinity for defensive line play. So Joey, obviously Philip Rivers and Gates were still on that team. And so like I hung on, but Joey was a key piece of me getting excited again about the Chargers. And not that it went like amazing, but as somebody, I love watching defensive line tape. I love watching the technician that Joey Bosa is. And there is an emotional side of why I defend him so much, because he's a key piece of why I still root for this team as hard as I do. So he's received a lot of hate over the last couple of years, despite anybody who can talk about him says nothing but positive things about him as a person.
Yeah.
I love watching his tape, have always loved watching his tape, but he's not the same player, and he's missing so many games. There's just not the upside here. So it sucks. It's the tough part of football. We hated to see Keenan Allen leave for the same reason. We did not like to see Mike Williams leave. Losing Joey Bosa will hurt emotionally, but it's the right decision for where this team is at and where he's at, unfortunately.
Odds the Houston game swayed them to keep him on some contract.
I think it definitely helps his case.
Mm-hmm.
I think leading up to that game, I probably would have said like maybe a 15% chance he's back, and maybe now I'll say like a 20% chance he's back.
Okay.
So I don't think it's out of the question that they just say, hey, we have enough cap space, we like Joey, we'll just keep him and then we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But I still think the most likely situation is that he does get cut.
Yeah. Ricky points out, what comp pick will you get for Bosa leaving? They'd cut him. So nothing.
Yeah. You do not get comp pick players.
Yeah.
Right. You do not get comp picks for players you cut. They would have to keep him, and then he would have to sign a contract next year to get a comp pick for him.
Yeah, if you got comp picks for players you cut, Tom Telesco would have had 400 comp picks.
Yes, it would be nice. But the whole point of comp picks is that other teams want your players.
Yay.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments today from Joe Hortiz that stood out to you, Tyler?
Nah.
Okay. Same. Sounds good to me. All right. Before we get started in our top 10 free agent rankings, of course, I have to tell you about our friends over at PrizePicks, the best and easiest way to consume daily fantasy sports. NBA season is coming to a close. March Madness is right around the corner. I cannot believe that sentence just came out of my mouth. Basketball season has just started for me. So I've just really been getting into it recently. So this is definitely the time that you want to use PrizePicks, get some extra skin in the game. Obviously, there are other sporting events out there. NHL, Major League Baseball has started with spring training recently. I know all of you are big Dodgers and Padres fans or other baseball fans. Baseball always gets a little heated out here. PrizePicks is the best way to get some extra skin in the game. Super easy to use, super user-friendly. Cannot recommend it enough. And it does actually help support our show on the Guilty as Charged podcast. So please go check it out. PrizePicks.com/guilty, code guilty at checkout. Sincerely, it does mean a lot if you guys can go check it out.
You want to have some fun? Luka is playing the Mavericks tonight. So have at it with the PrizePicks selections over there.
Yeah. He looked like himself again last week. So good stuff for the Lakers.
Yay.
Okay, we have our top 10 free agents. Again, we've been talking about a lot of these guys, so now we are ranking them. I'm going to start here first. I do have Amari Cooper making my top 10. We're going to do some honorable mentions at the end of this segment as well. But Amari Cooper did make my top 10. Ryan Kelly did as well, and then Tevin Jenkins. These are my 10 through 8 players. So Amari Cooper, to me, makes a lot of sense for where this team needs to spend money as a boundary X receiver. I'm willing to bet that 2024 was a little bit of an outlier for him. Mm-hmm. This is not a guy who is in his mid-30s and fell off a cliff physically. So I'm willing to bet that the Chargers could maximize his opportunity to regain that form. Ryan Kelly, I honestly considered leaving him out of this list
I
just
agree.
because the injury history is not great. It really makes me concerned. Like, I think there's a good chance you sign Ryan Kelly and he is only your starter really for 2025. I think there's a pretty good chance he does not finish this 2-year contract. So I considered leaving him off, but their center need is so dire that I could not justify it. So
Yeah.
I started this exercise going like, oh, like I'll put him higher. I ended up with him at 9 reluctantly, but I think just the sheer need justifies having him on here. And then Tevin Jenkins is going to be my second guard on this list. I flip flopped between a few players. Jenkins and his identity to me just makes so much sense for what this team wants to do at that position. You know, he has that physicality aspect of things that this team, I think, really likes, and he has the flexibility to potentially play tackle. So, this was kind of like my tier break, if you will, between 10 through 8. But I feel good enough about each of these guys making my top 10.
Yeah, Ryan Kelly is even higher up for me based on the sheer magnitude of them just freaking needing a center. If you ranked, maybe 10 best free agents regardless of NFL team, Ryan Kelly wouldn't have made my top 10, but this is more so for the Chargers and what they need. So Ryan Kelly is going to be on my list. So glad to see him here. I also have Jenkins. I'll get there in a sec. Cooper would have been my 11th, I guess. I just am a little more concerned with the previous season in terms of most likely, like 10 most likely free agents the Chargers would sign. I think Cooper might be top 5, top 6, given their needs, given the connections. I think that makes sense. For me, I'm not like a huge fan, but I guess like at 10, you're not saying that you're like the biggest one either. So he'd be 11th for me, 10th for you. So we're about in the same spot.
Yeah. There's a lot of overlap. There's a lot more overlap than I thought we would have.
Yeah.
So why don't we get to yours next year?
Yeah, definitely. So something that's different for me is Juwan Johnson. And that to me, kind of like Ryan Kelly, is a look, let's just take care of this ahead of the draft. And if something is available in the draft and it's fantastic, awesome. If you have a chance to take one of these better tight ends and it's at a really good spot, great. How likely is that? I don't know. I'd love to solve it ahead of time. So Juwan Johnson for me does make the list with the rest of the class, or the free agent class and the draft class ahead. Tevin Jenkins makes the list for me, as he does for you. And Chris Godwin, you do have him higher. For me, the only reason I don't have him higher is the injury history. The contract really doesn't bug me as much.
Sure.
It's just the injury history. But I think he would be fantastic for the Chargers. It's a gamble I would love for the Chargers to take. I'm starting to come around more and more to the idea of Chris Godwin, but just because of the injury history, he's going to be 8th for me.
Yeah, that's fair. And we can get to Chris Godwin here in a minute, but Juwan Johnson, he was going to be the guy who I was going to have take Ryan Kelly's place if there was somebody else. So you mentioned Amari Cooper is 11 for you. Juwan Johnson's probably 11 for me. The opinions on him are a little mixed in terms of what kind of value he has. So PFF obviously has him at 3 years, $9.75 million. He made their top 100 free agent list. I think he was their was he their highest tight end or second?
Yeah, he's tight end 1, definitely in terms of pay. I believe in terms of I am right here at Johnson at 38. And the next best is Gesicki at 76.
Yeah. So that makes sense, but like Bill Barnwell had him. So Bill Barnwell did tiers at each position, and I think he had him as like a 4th tier tight end, and in that group of potential tight end ads. So the opinions on him are a little bit mixed in terms of how much value he has to a team. But I think in this specific operation, the ability to win against man covers, the ability to create yards after the catch, the ability to stretch the seam is stuff that makes a lot of sense for the Chargers. And we'll get to a couple things later on him, I think.
For Juwan?
Yes. Just hold on.
Okay. Sorry. Then I'll just shut up and nod.
Okay. My next tier here, so 7 to 4, I think it's pretty similar to you. DJ Reed, I thought about moving up and around. You have a different other cornerback here. I would love to see what Jesse Minter could do with a corner like DJ Reed, who makes so many plays on the football. And he is undersized for sure. But his ability to create turnovers, create pass breakups, to me, merits somebody who should be in the top 10. I think the positional fit and scheme fit for Carlton Davis is a little higher, so I have him one spot ahead of DJ Reed. I do think DJ Reed is a better corner overall. So I would just love to see what Jesse Minter could do with a talent like this.
Yeah.
And while the size fit isn't ideal, it's not like the Chargers have a ton of small players in the secondary. Like Derwin James is going to play more slot for them. He's obviously huge. You have Cam Hart who could play outside corner for you. Tarheeb still is a little undersized, but he's not, 5'9" like DJ Reed is. So DJ Reed is small, but his ability to overcompensate, I think is just something I'd be really interested to see. I mentioned Carlton Davis. I think this is a perfect scheme fit, stylistical fit. I question a little bit, is he reaching, kind of the cornerback cliff a little bit? I think there's a chance that might be the case. But he was kind of not in a great situation in Detroit. Like the Lions are a great team, but their defense asks a ton of the corners. Like they play a ton of man coverage, and getting him in with Jesse Minter where he can play a little bit more zone, have a little bit more, of an easy assignment, I think is something I'd be interested in. And then Chris Godwin, I have 5. Osa Odigizua, I have 4. Osa sounds like he's going to return to Dallas, which really sucks. Was not thinking that the Cowboys would make that decision. But they make, it's a smart move. So I guess credit to them.
Yeah.
But he's awesome. I would love to see it, but it does sound like he's kind of returning to Dallas.
Yeah, DJ Reed was the toughest one for me, and I only left him off my list, again, specifically for the Chargers, because I just wasn't sure about the size fit. There's sort of like something there with DJ Turner in Michigan. He's a $178 at Michigan, but he was 5'11". So again, like 5'9", 188 or whatever DJ Reed is. Sure. Again, has not stopped him from being a good player at all. He is a top 10 free agent for me overall. I just was not sure about that being a fit for them. But I do like your point about, look, if everybody in the secondary is 5'11", 6'1", 6'2", you can have someone like DJ Reed, who's just flat out a good football player who can do a lot of things for your defense. So that kind of does sway me. Like maybe I would reconsider putting DJ Reed in the top 10, but I didn't.
Yeah, I get it. You actually, I kept on going back to the comment about the amount of receiver ones that they're going to face, and
sure,
how many corners in free agency would I really, really trust to go up against those guys? And DJ Reed is one of them.
Yeah.
So 7 might be a little rich, given his size limitations, but he had to make my list because of that aspect. And then Chris Godwin, I have at 5. We talked a lot about him during the wide receiver show, so I don't want to hesitate a little bit. It does sound like he's also potentially returning to Tampa Bay. A lot of these guys are going to return, unfortunately. I don't know. But I do think the slot only comments to me are funny. This is not a Keenan Allen situation, and all due respect to Keenan Allen, Chris Godwin is a legit 4-4 guy. He played the slot in Tampa Bay a lot because that's where they needed him. That's where the offense kind of functioned. Mm-hmm. But he can block his tail off. He can play on the outside. He has legitimate speed. He has legitimate yards after the catch potential. I really think Chargers fans have slept a little bit on this potential fit, and it might not matter. He is potentially going back to Tampa Bay, but I think him and Ladd would complement each other really, really nicely. Mm-hmm. He's not an X. I get that, but I think he's a really, really good fit in this offense.
Yeah, I'm really not opposed to the Chargers taking 2 non-X receivers and a tight end and making that their weapons of choice. I don't think they desperately need to go spend or draft high an X for the sake of it. So if they have someone with at least some flexibility like Godwin, I think that's perfectly fine. And yeah, sure, he's not playing outside a ton all the time with Tampa Bay. I guess when you have a Hall of Famer in Mike Evans, you don't always always the primary, X target on the outside. So I'm perfectly fine with Godwin. I think he'd be awesome for the Chargers. I see what Roman does, and I can see what Godwin would do with them. So I'm all for it. For me, there goes Ryan Kelly. Carlton Davis, I believe, is in the exact same spot for us. I'm all aboard the Rasul Douglas train. I can't let it die. So I'm going to keep going with it. I just think he's just so safe. The size profile makes sense. The numbers make sense. He's a good tackler. He's been healthy. He plays a ton. And it's only a 2-year deal. So you're not locked into this. It's just a nice stopgap. We can provide nice, stable play for a while. And then Osa for me at 4. We'll see who. I mean, we even talked about Ryan Kelly potentially returning. So, Rasul Douglas, there's not much in the secondary for the Bills right now. It's not Elam. He could return. But again, these guys are, the best, the free agents that we think. So I can see why their teams would want to bring him back.
Yeah, I think the Bills have kind of shown that they take age into consideration in the secondary. Like they just cut Tre'Davious White last offseason, and granted there was some injury stuff there too. But even though they don't have like a guy in there to replace him, they do have Christian Benford on the opposite side. Do they want to get younger at corner and go pay for an edge rusher? I think there's a good chance. The Bills are a little cap strapped. Like they have some avenues to create some more cap space, but it does kind of sound like they're going to prioritize an edge rusher if they can get one in free agency. So Rasul Douglas, I think, does have a good chance of hitting it.
I'm trying to figure out when they also got rid of. Oh, never mind. Wait, when did they get rid of Gilmore? He was 26. Never mind. Younger.
Yeah, that was
a while ago.
And then they traded him to the Patriots, which was like, cool. Why would you do that?
And he was an All-Pro.
And he was defensive player of the year.
Yeah. Nice.
Really great job. The Bills have a great track record of trading great players to other teams.
So that's Come cool. Get Patrick Mahomes. Go get Xavier Worthy, who had 125 yards and a touchdown against us in the championship game.
Yeah. So maybe trade with some NFC teams, Buffalo.
Fair enough.
It is. Okay, rounding out our top three. We had the same exact order in the top three. So you're going to see the same slides over here. Oops, my bad. So we both have Devontae Adams, Milton Williams, and Trey Smith. I was kind of expecting you to have Bosa higher than Milton. What kind of went into your decision to have Milton Williams at 2?
Mostly just the size difference, I think, between the two players. Not that it's significant. Williams isn't 310 pounds. But I just think that Williams is more all in as a pass rusher, and I see this even potentially even more there for them. And I think that the Chargers, if they bring back like Ford, draft a player, they can figure out the run defense as well. Milton Williams does not have to be a great run defender for them. He just needs to go kill Patrick Mahomes. I think Milton Williams can do that. I also did sign him in my simulation, so he's been my guy for like a couple of weeks over Bosa.
That's fair. And yeah, we did include Devontae Adams because he's essentially guaranteed to get cut. Although Aaron Rodgers might strike again, man. He might get his way to the Rams, and he might convince Sean McVay to sign Devontae. So the gift that keeps on giving, Aaron Rodgers, everybody.
Enjoy Los Angeles. You can have, the difference between Aaron Rodgers and the one team and Justin Herbert with the other could not be further from the other.
Yeah, I do not understand at all why the Rams would do this. So for those of you who haven't been watching and listening like I have or whatever, there's a lot of buzz that they are going to trade Matthew Stafford. And there was a report today that Aaron Rodgers would be like the next guy that they would want, which to me, it makes no sense. Like,
no,
if you're going to get rid of Matthew Stafford, in my opinion, it should be to get younger and less injury prone than what you have in Matthew Stafford. So go sign the Sam Darnold, go sign like a Justin Fields, and then draft somebody. Like all of those situations make way more sense to me than signing up for the Aaron Rodgers experience. So I don't get it. I do not understand why you would get rid of Matthew Stafford just to turn around and pay Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. I don't get that either, but it is very interesting that they've told Cooper Kupp they're moving on. Stafford has been told he can look for other options, and they might have they've already been kind of hinting, they want this receiver out, this quarterback out, and oh, look, this quarterback and this receiver are available. So I guess I don't get it. But I guess McVay can figure it out. And frankly, the defense rocks.
Their defense is awesome.
Like the Rams defense is sick. So you can go from kind of the same Jet situation to over with the Rams, but like it's Sean McVay calling plays. Well, no, yeah, McVay would call plays.
Yeah,
we'll see what the rest of the offensive staff is. But yeah, I don't get it.
Yeah, they did just hire Alex Van Pelt, who was his offensive coordinator under Matt LaFleur in Green Bay, and there might be another addition coming. So yeah, the Rams, very weird. Do not get it. They were like legitimately 2 plays away from going to the NFC Championship game and hosting an NFC Championship game, and they're going to pivot to Aaron Rodgers. I don't get it. It makes zero sense to me. Do not comprehend.
No.
Finally, with Trey Smith, it sounds like there is a legit bidding war happening already. I have a friend of ours who, or at least a friend of mine, I should say, who's like the equivalent of us for the Bears. Has done some work for the Bears team, is decently connected. They are in on Trey Smith. They are bidding on Trey Smith. And the Chiefs are trying to keep Trey Smith. There was a report from Nate Taylor of The Athletic, or is he ESPN now? I can't remember. Anyways, Nate Taylor, who's like the most connected Chiefs beat reporter, was saying earlier today that he's hearing the Chiefs have offered a 5-year contract of a market-setting nature to Trey Smith. There's also been some talk about like a tag and trade situation. I personally don't see the Chargers getting into a bidding war for Trey Smith. And if that leads to like a $25 million per year contract value for Trey Smith, I don't see the Chargers paying that. That being said, he should be number one on everybody's list. If he is available, he should be number one on the list. I think he is the best player at his position that is a free agent. And to me, fits the archetype perfectly of what this regime wants at guard. He plays a ton. He's very rarely been injured. Physicality, is one of the best run blockers in the league. So I don't know, man. I don't think it's likely, but to me, this is number one for the Chargers specific board, and I don't really think it's all that close.
Yeah, he's definitely my number one. I don't know where in terms of like how close he would be to the rest, but he was going to be my number one no matter what. If there were any concerns about the blood clotting, yeah, maybe, but like there hasn't been any. He's played more games than probably everyone else on this list. He's missed one game in all the time that he's played, and that includes all the time he's had to play deep into the AFC Championship, into the Super Bowl. He's been there. The numbers have been good. The size profile fits. He fits what the Chargers want. You get to steal him from a rival. Everything makes, there's even some like mild connections to Trey Smith on the staff. So everything makes sense. Will he be there? I don't know, because if the option is return to current team, that's obviously not the Chargers. If a next option is find most money, that is also not going to be the Chargers. Sure. The Chargers are going to lose the current team war because they're not. And they're going to lose the bidding war because they can't. So unless that's just what they want to do, is win a bidding war for Trey Smith and just put up $25 million a year for maybe 4 to 5 years. Like, I guess the Chargers could win that. I don't know what the rest of the roster would look like, but they could win that war, I suppose. I don't think they need to be.
Yeah, I think there are good enough options for them. If Trey Smith were like the only guard out there, like go get into that bidding war for sure. But we both had another guard on our list. There's another guard that I think we'll talk about. To your point about games and snaps played, if you include the postseason, Trey Smith played 1,404 snaps as a rookie, 1,230 in 2022 in his second season, 1,374 in 2023, and then this past season was 1,288. So like there are some games where the Chiefs have rested starters, but this is a guy who in 4 seasons has played 5,296 snaps. Like he is a machine out there, and I just think like this is the one you want to pay for. I know everybody wanted T. Higgins before like the franchise stuff and everything like that, but Trey Smith is the guy you pay for, and I think they should at least be in the conversation. They should be bidding, and maybe they don't win, but they should be in the conversation.
Yeah, and I know even if it's not great, if the Chargers run it back on their defensive line, it'll be pretty good. I think the interior defensive line will be pretty good. I trust everybody. I don't trust the Chargers' interior coaching staff and these guys to find a second-round player and make them great. I don't trust them yet. That's maybe different when they get their own guys. Right now, I don't trust them. And so, if there's a set of corners, I didn't believe in this DB room at all. I had no idea who Tarheeb still was. And now Jesse Minter can have whatever, do whatever. Don't feel that way about this interior. So I think, again, for a multitude of reasons. Trey Smith is kind of easily number one.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, running through some honorable mentions here. Oh, I wonder why this came out that way. Okay. Both of us agree Josh Sweat, if you lose Khalil Mack, would be much higher on this list. He is obviously the number one pass rusher. The Chargers can't really afford Khalil plus another expensive edge rusher, so that's why he didn't make our list. But if the Chargers lose on Mack, where would Josh Sweat rank for you? Because I think he's top 5, but like specific slot, I wasn't sure.
Okay, so let me think here. He would be probably jockeying with like 4 or 5, probably with Osa, like whether he's the 4th or 5th guy, I think, because at that point they need an edge rusher desperately.
Yeah. I don't think you can walk into the draft with a cheap free agent, Thule, and Bud Dupree. That's not a great situation to be in. So if you lose out on Khalil, Josh Sweat to me makes a lot of sense. I would probably have him at 4.
Yeah.
Because edge over defensive tackle, but I would still have the top 3 would still be my top 3.
Yeah. I think I'd agree there.
We talked about DJ Reed. We talked about Amari Cooper. Patrick McCarry to me just makes so much sense. I don't think he's like a great player, but for the Chargers, I think he's probably in the top 15 in terms of, targets. There's obviously a ton of connections here. He can play left guard, center, right guard, right tackle, left tackle. That's the kind of versatility the Chargers want out of Jamari Salyer, and he can't really do it. So Patrick McCarry has done it, and he's done it very well. So I think he makes a ton of sense. And then I wanted to bake this in here. The Chargers hired former Michigan offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach Kirk Campbell this week, or reportedly, according to Tom Pelissero. He was actually at Penn State when Juwan Johnson was there, when Will Fries was there, when Chris Godwin was there, and Mike Gesicki, but kind of sounds like he's not really a priority. So the Chargers have a lot of Penn State connections now. If they can convince some of these players to come over and sign, remains to be seen. But people kind of pointed out, like in a hurry, like Michigan. To me, this is a little bit more valuable for the Penn State connection, where he was working with the offensive line in particular at Penn State and former Indianapolis Colts Will Fries. So it was a little tough for me to like wrap my arms around Will Fries because the numbers aren't great, but like the perception of him is. So I think he's worth talking about as an honorable mention. And they have a lot of connections to him now. So keep an eye on Will Fries.
Yeah, this team has been very happy to go get guys that they have connections with. And I can't imagine they get out of this free agent cycle without 1 or 2 of these guys with Penn State connections. And frankly, like if there's a place to put $50 on Juwan Johnson, I would do it.
Yeah, a lot of connections to Juwan Johnson. And there's a lot of more buzz coming out of the draft circles that Colston Loveland is going to go probably a lot higher than what people think. So Colston Loveland might be gone like well before the Chargers are. Daniel Jeremiah said on his national call that there are several teams, and I would imagine the Chargers are one, that have Colston Loveland as tight end 1. So Tyler Warren is being talked about as like a no-brainer top 10 pick. Well, if the league is split between him and Colston Loveland, Loveland's going to go earlier than I think we are talking about as Chargers fans.
Yeah, he's not getting past Denver. I can't imagine he gets past, unless Genty's there, which I suppose would change things. But
sure,
I think the Broncos are going to rip the Chargers' hearts out on draft night.
Yeah, sucks.
Yeah.
So yeah, Juwan Johnson covers your bases. He's not a great tight end, but we talked about him as a really, really solid option. You have some other cheap favorites that you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, I wanted to throw some on there. They're not top 10 players, but there are ones I'd like to mention. So Mike Williams, because I same reason as last year. He's no longer, I mean, he is, but he's no longer former first round pick for the Chargers, needs to figure it out and show his draft worth. Mike Williams. He is free agent X receiver Mike Williams, because the Chargers needed anything last year at that position. They didn't get it. So Mike Williams, I'd love to see back. Josh Uche potentially with some connections. Love to have him do anything on this team for the price that he's currently valued at. Matt Collins, we love, like team Matt Collins for both of us. And then Kevin Zeitler, kind of like, Macari, just find something. I could put a guard on here. I just, even though it's a stopgap, probably 1 year deal,
Sure.
you get anything out there at this point.
Yeah. I mentioned him on a little bit earlier, but Ben Bredesen, if the Chargers kind of strike out on some of these other guards, like Ben Bredesen and somebody that I think is worthy of a flyer, played pretty well in Tampa Bay. I mean, I watched the Chargers tape against the Buccaneers. Ben Bredesen was playing extremely well against the defensive line that we think very highly of. So was everybody else on the offensive line that day. But he's a guy I think would make a lot of sense, can play all three spots on the interior. And then I mentioned him on our previous show, Laken Tomlinson, who played with the Jets, can play both guard spots. He's a little bit more of a speedy guard versus a gap guard, but and a very experienced player who could fit, pretty nicely on this team.
Yeah, I think somewhere for us that we want like guard settled in some form.
Yeah, there's a lot of guards in free agency, folks. A lot of guards that this team could pay.
Yep.
All right. Any other thoughts here, Tyler, before we jump into some of these super chats?
No, let's jump right in.
So we touched on Dark Samus's first one. So Athir kicking us off. He wants to trade down with the Eagles for second and third and fifth this year, plus second next year. Let's build a Super Bowl team. Tyler, Steven, you making the move. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, obviously the answer is always who's there at 22. But if you're assuming your best and favorite players are gone, yeah, typically that range of 25 to 45 to 50 are kind of in that same batch. The list of second round grades on these guys is going to be pretty long. So I don't mind it. I don't know what the compensation actually works out to be, but I don't mind.
So according to the trade chart, pick 22 is worth 780. Pick 32 is worth 590. So that's a 190 difference that you have to make up. So you're probably not getting as much as Athir is suggesting here. Pick 96 is worth 116. That's the third round pick that the Eagles have. So you're maybe getting a third and a fourth, or like a third and next year's second type of deal if you want to move down that far. I do think there's a decent chance the Chargers move around. There's a good amount of teams who might be a little bit more desperate for like an offensive tackle. If the Oregon offensive tackle or Armand Membu start falling or that kind of conversation, I do think the Chargers could move down. But all the way down to 32, that's a little tough for me. I think the Chargers can still get a really, really good player at 22. 32 is a long way down to move down. That's a big difference.
Yeah. Although you can get a good receiver at 34, I'll tell you that.
That is very true.
Although that was a very good draft class.
That was a very good draft class. At 32,
who would we take?
Yeah, you're probably taking like Derek Harmon, TJ Sanders type, defensive tackle, maybe one of the, like the secondary, second tier of edge rushers, or you could take one of the corners at that point.
Would you take Booker at 32?
Booker at 32 from a trade down is fine. I will consent that, but he's not my guy. I actually have Donovan Jackson from Ohio State graded a few points higher.
Yeah, I haven't watched him yet. I spent way too much time watching receivers on day 3, and I'll tell you what, they still suck. I still don't feel this is a good receiver class.
I think it's an okay day 2 group. There are some guys I like on day 2. Jack Beck from TCU. Sure. I know we're all scarred from TCU receivers, but I do like him. I think he would be a good fit. Kyle Williams from Washington State is probably the only day 3 receiver that I've watched that I like. Led last year's class in yards after the catch, was the fastest receiver at the Senior Bowl. But he's the only day 3 guy I like so far.
Yeah, I've got some names. I won't list them because I wouldn't want to do that to them. But I tried all the splashy players everyone mentions, like, oh, look at this guy and the thing in the X receiver, and he's fast and whatever. I cycled through all of them, guys. And Andrew Armstrong is a lot of fun. The rest I happen to see just for no, thank you.
Do you like Pat Bryant?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. But that was really cool for like a day until I realized everybody else liked him too. So I was like, oh, look at this round 5 receiver. And then it's like, oh, never mind.
Yeah, now he's like a consensus round 3 pick. So
yeah. It's crazy looking at my big board. I put at the time what the consensus ranking was for some of these guys, and it's changed so much. I think even like RJ Harvey was like 204 for me when I first watched him. Like, yeah, RJ Harvey. And now he's at like 110. So it's no longer, ooh, RJ Harvey.
He still counts. You still probably have him higher than 110.
Oh, I'll definitely have. I don't have 110 players, first off, but I will end up having him higher than 110, I would imagine.
Yeah, but the Chargers probably got to take a receiver on day 2. Is the more I'm looking at this class, they probably got to take one on day 2. So in Athir's case, they can do that because they would have a bunch of extra picks on day 2.
Yeah, the one that I'll do it, and I rarely do this. I can't watch Shamar Stewart. I've watched him. I tried to like him, and I just see. I can remember his name. Who's the guy from the Raiders drafted?
Oh, Tyree Wilson.
Like a worse version of that, and I liked Tyree Wilson, but Shamar Stewart. I don't know what people are seeing now. Can Jesse Minter probably make that work? Yeah, like he probably would be amazing, but I mean the numbers are terrible. He has more missed tackles than quarterback hits. You cannot be a top 16 pick and have more missed tackles than quarterback hits. That's absurd.
He did lead Texas A&M in pressures last year. I'm going to throw that out there.
What, with 4? I think he had 36.
Yeah. It's an athletic bet for sure. The man does some truly freakish stuff from an athletic standpoint. Mm-hmm. But there are people who think he's like a no-brainer top 10 pick, and I'm like, not in this class. This guy has way too many dudes at edge, at defensive tackle. Mm-hmm. So I would be comfortable taking Shamar Stewart at 22. But if the Chargers were picking 12 and people were like Shamar Stewart, I'd be like, I don't know. But the dude is an athletic freak. Like there was a play against, I think it was Texas, where they were at the goal line and he was in a 4-point stance, and then he jumped over the entire wave and stopped a quarterback sneak. He does stuff like that. He chases down a quarterback on the backside. He's 280 pounds. And there was like one dip and rip. But these are like 4 or 5 plays I'm mentioning out of like everything that I watched. Correct. Like the tape that I watched, I'm just like, okay, when's the play gonna happen? And it's just like once or twice a game. He did have a good Senior Bowl, but he's a major risk. But the traits are super fun to me.
Yeah, no thanks.
And I get it. That's fair. Next one here from Dark Samus, continuing with his interior offensive line theme. He wants to know, can the Chargers trade for Quentin Nelson?
I think the Colts would say no. And I don't know about the compensation.
Was he? I know he was much. There was a year where he was bad.
There was a year, but he's back in that conversation of like he's the guy again.
Yeah, because when the Chargers played the Colts on Monday Night Football, like Christopher Hinton kind of gave him the business. He only allowed 20 pressures last year.
It's pretty good.
81 total blocking grade. He played 1,000 snaps. So it seems like Quentin Nelson is back. So I mean, they're potentially moving on from Ryan Kelly, potentially losing Will Fries in free agency. They're not moving on from Quentin Nelson also.
Yeah, lose your all 3 interior guys, and good luck, Anthony Richardson, maybe.
Right. Like he's probably their best player, depending on how you feel about DeForest Buckner.
Yeah.
Or Jonathan Taylor, I guess.
I think so. I mean, Nelson's what, 28, maybe?
He turns 29 in March, next month.
All right. I don't know where I got that from.
Maybe they can trade for him next year.
There you go. Yeah. I'm all for it.
Ninja Low says that he had a nightmare that I love that you're having nightmares about the draft. I love it. True sicko mode over here. That we traded up to 9 for a 3rd, 4th, and 2 5ths just to draft Mason Taylor. I love it. He says, anyways, if we don't draft Loveland, doesn't the tight end room kind of seem doomed? Much love from Brazil. Man, I'm super happy for you. You get to see the Chargers play in Brazil in a few months. So hopefully you and the other Chargers fans in Brazil are able to make it up there. But what are your thoughts about Mason Taylor the first round?
Well, the good news is they only gave up a third, fourth, and 2/5 to move up to 9. So in terms of draft compensation, that's pretty good. You still have your second round pick. You got plenty of other picks in the draft. So not bad. Mason Taylor, I don't know what I guess the opposite of a handstand is just standing. But I don't know whatever the celebratory opposite. I will sit down and cry. Whatever the celebratory polar opposite is, I would do that because Mason Taylor be a fine player, but you draft him at 9, and I will call a hotline.
I might call a hotline if they draft him at 55, to be honest.
Oh, no, I can't do that. Oh no.
Not a fan. Not a fan.
Got it. Good to know. Will he make your top 110? That is the question.
Probably 110 for sure.
Out of 112. Yeah.
Out of 112. That man's blocking is horrendous. That is not good. So don't see him being a fit. But if they miss out on Love, then is the tight end room doomed? No, like if they sign Juwan Johnson and they take, a fourth round tight end, shot, I think that's workable. I mean, and I know everybody hates Will Dissly now for whatever reason, but he did just have 500 yards receiving. So him and Juwan Johnson, I think that's manageable at least. Yeah.
And I will find some way to irrationally hype up Stone Smart as a 500-yard receiving option for the Chargers.
Yes. And we didn't even mention his former offensive coordinator at Old Dominion is now the aforementioned, what's his name?
Yeah.
Kirk Campbell.
There you go.
There we go. So he called plays for Stone Smart at quarterback. So there we go.
And then he was so bad he moved him to receiver. No.
Maybe we'll get a Stone Smart pass this year now that we have this.
They should.
Yeah.
They should.
Cody Spencer, if we get Devontae, who would you draft between Omarion Hampton and Colston Loveland? Would it make picking defense in round 1 more likely?
Hampton or Loveland? Loveland. I would take Loveland because I don't know what I'm getting in the tight end draft the rest of the way. But I'd be bummed to miss on Hampton, but getting Loveland would be fun.
Yeah. Mel Kiper says that the league has a little bit of a split between Ashton Jeanty and Omarion Hampton. So he thinks Omarion Hampton could go very, very high in the draft. Not that Mel Kiper is like the end-all be-all guy, but I don't think he would just throw that out there without hearing about it first. So
wait, what did he do? Oh, he had the Lions taking the UCLA
yeah.
At linebacker.
He generally always throws like a third-round guy in there in the first round, but yeah, that would be crazy.
I think Kenneth Grant didn't get drafted.
Correct.
In the first round of that one.
Correct.
So there's that.
I at least buy that there's a lot of fans about Omarion Hampton.
Yeah.
Dan Jeremiah had the Chargers taking him in his recent mock draft. I definitely trust him more than Mel, but if Colston Loveland is there, I'm taking him. Like, I think it just helps the passing game more often. And like you mentioned, the running back class is sick. There is a great selection of day 2 and even day 3 running backs this team could take from. I'm not as big of a fan of this tight end class as we have talked about.
Yeah. Would defense be more likely? I don't know. Because then it just depends on what Adams' deal is. But if it's like a 2-year deal for Adams, I don't know. You might want to also go find weapons should this not work out.
Yeah, I mean, Devontae Adams is not going to be around forever. He's probably a 2-year deal, and then he's probably leaving. So I still think you would consider taking Loveland if he was on the board in this scenario.
Yeah.
Any specific players you don't want to see drafted by the other AFC West teams? If Kenneth Grant is drafted by an AFC West team, I'm going to lose it. Particularly if he goes to the Chiefs. Like if he falls to the Chiefs,
oh no,
I will be so upset that we would have to watch Grant and Chris Jones just terrorize the Chargers interior forever. So that's probably my number one guy I don't want to see in the division because He's a bit of an unfinished product right now, but
Mm-hmm.
if he hits, like he might be like he has the potential to challenge Dexter Lawrence as like the best nose tackle in the league. And I don't say that lightly. I think his potential is insanely high. Um, he's going to be a top 10 player for me on my board. Like, yeah, I think he is a guy who should go in the top 10 in the draft, like full stop, especially in this class where there's not good quarterbacks. I think he is a freak of all freaks.
Mm-hmm.
And if he gets drafted by any AFC West team, I will be upset.
Yeah, I mean, right there. I mean, unfortunately, the Raiders get their pick of plenty of players. That could just be Mason Graham for them.
Sure.
Yay. Good news is there's not like a receiver I'm super worried about the Chiefs taking. I haven't watched tackles yet. I don't know. Any of the running backs. Like, let's say the Chiefs get Hampton or something for some reason, or like Trayvon Henderson or something.
Henderson really seems like their type.
Yeah.
Because I mean, that's what they thought they were getting with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and that obviously did not work out. But I think Henderson's a much better prospect than Edwards-Helaire was.
Yeah, I love Henderson.
Whoever the Chiefs take, they don't have like an amazing success rate, but whoever they take, I'm going to be upset. Like it's going to be somebody I like. And
no, yeah, as the kids say, I was crashing out when they drafted Sky Moore. I was just like,
yeah, we were on the way to the airport in Vegas, and we were like, "Fuck, Sky Moore, no!" And he hasn't done shit in the NFL.
No, he's barely done a thing.
Although he did have a touchdown in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, so good for him.
Yeah, I haven't had one of those.
True. Leia Smith sent a simple super sticker. I learned today. I guess I should have realized this, but apparently Leia has something in common with the Hortiz family, who are huge Baltimore Orioles fans. Apparently, Joe said on the Chargers Weekly podcast that him and his boys used to go as many games as they possibly could. So, congrats, Leia, and thanks for the super sticker.
Yeah, I guess that makes some sense.
Morningstar 6 says, bro, Zion Johnson at center. I'm going to actually lose my mind. Jamari is right there. Again, a continued beat. He's, for the love of God, put Felipe Rios in the Hall. That's his other point.
No. Well, the second part would be great. Obviously, Rivers in the Hall of Fame would be awesome. Jamari at center, I do not see happening, because watching Bradley Bozeman not be able to execute some blocks and then going to Jamari, I mean, I guess you don't have to do those blocks anymore. But it'd be nice to see them sometimes.
Yeah. No, I like Jamari. I do think his best position is guard, and then it would be tackle after that. So I do not have any interest in watching him play center. But yeah, Philip Rivers and all would hopefully love to see that happen. I've seen some Chargers fans book tickets for the Hall of Fame game this year just to go see Antonio Gates, so that's pretty cool. I wish the Hall of Fame game were in a cooler place than Ohio. I'll say that.
Yeah, no, whatever. I'm never going to that game. Maybe if Rivers gets in, then I guess I would have to show up, but I'm good.
I mean, the teams don't care about it anymore. Like,
no.
The Bears rested their backups in last year's game. Like, it's like firmly a undrafted free agent only game at this point in time.
Yes. So I'm checking on the Lakers score. Luka has 10 points already.
Nice. Very good.
Yeah, that's going to be something.
Will the Chargers be one of the Hall of Fame teams, Brendan asks? I don't think so.
It's always like some old AFC team and then some other team I don't care about, which I didn't realize like the Cardinals were the first NFL team, I think, or one of the first two NFL teams. Sorry, we lost Kane Break 58 he's from Ohio. Round on the ends and high in the middle. Tell me if you know. Right. My grandparents went to Ohio State, so I'm kind of there with you guys. But I don't want to go there.
Yeah, I don't want to go there either. So Eric Allen is in this Hall of Fame class. He's mostly known for his Raiders days. Jared Allen for his Vikings. Obviously Gates. Sterling Sharp for the Packers. I don't know how they decide who plays in that game. I feel like they try and make it like teams from those like Hall of Famers, but I don't know, man. Making the Chargers do the Hall of Fame game and Brazil is just cruel. Like, that's cruel. Like that amount of extra travel and games is just like it would be kind of cool, I guess, but that's just unfair.
Yeah, no thanks.
They should only make Midwest teams go to that game.
Yeah, the ones who don't even need a flight, just hop on a bus.
Yeah, the Packers can just hop on a bus. They're good.
Yeah. And on the road to their Super Bowl victory.
Yeah. True. Okay, that is going to do it for us. Appreciate you guys and all of the super chats as always. We'll be back on Thursday talking about some more draft content from the combine. We are going to have a day of testing at that point. So tomorrow is when the first group of players will start to do their media stuff. And then Thursday, we'll have more media stuff. And then the first day of testing. So should be a lot of fun. Combine week isn't, the timing isn't great, but I'll try and watch as much as I can. And if you're not in the Discord, definitely go check it out. Alex Katzen has boots on the ground and has already shared a couple of interesting nuggets for free agency purposes. So Discord is in the Patreon link or YouTube link, YouTube membership link, I should say. So if you're not in there, please get in there and have a good time, and you'll get some information from Alex Katzen all week long. Be sure to follow him on Twitter as well if you're not. He does great stuff for us and Chargers Wire. Okay, that is going to do it for us on the Guilty as Charged podcast. We'll see you guys on Thursday. As always, hold up.